Dr. Sarah Chen stood at the observation deck of the Stellar Research Station, her dark eyes fixed on the endless sea of stars before her. 50 years had passed since humanity first broke the light-speed barrier, and yet the vast silence of space felt heavier than ever. "Another empty system," Dr. Chen reported Jack Morrison, her young assistant. He placed a tablet on her desk, displaying scan results from their latest exploration mission. "That makes it the 300th star system without any response to our signals." Sarah nodded slowly, her graying hair reflecting the soft blue light from nearby monitoring screens. At 55, she had spent most of her career searching for other civilizations. The empty responses weren't what bothered her anymore. It was the ruins they kept finding. "Pull up the archives from the Proxima Beta settlement," she said, moving to her workstation. The holographic display flickered to life, showing images of massive structures carved into a distant planet's surface. "These buildings, the technology fragments we've recovered. Someone was out here, Jack. Thousands of advanced civilizations according to these ruins. But where did they go?" Jack adjusted his glasses, a habit he hadn't broken despite modern eye correction being available. "Maybe they destroyed themselves. That's what the military thinks." Sarah shook her head. "No, the evidence doesn't support that. Look at these energy readings." She pulled up a chart showing regular patterns across multiple star systems. "These aren't random. They're too organized. It's as if everyone simply packed up and left." The station's AI chimed in with its daily report. "Deep space scan complete. No artificial signals detected in sectors 47 through 53. Continuing scheduled sweep of sector 54. Sarah was about to respond when something caught her eye. Among the usual data streams, a tiny irregular pattern pulsed on one of the secondary monitors. "Jack, do you see that?" They both leaned in closer. Among the normal background radiation and stellar noise, a signal repeated every 12.4 seconds. It wasn't like anything in their database. "Could be natural space phenomena," Jack suggested, but his voice carried a hint of excitement. "No," Sarah said, her fingers flying over the controls. "Natural phenomena don't produce patterns this precise. This is artificial." She began isolating the signal, cleaning up the interference. "And it's recent. Maybe a few days old." The signal grew clearer as Sarah's algorithms filtered out the background noise. Unlike the usual attempts at communication they sent out, radio waves, light patterns, or gravitational disturbances, this was something different. It seemed to exist between normal space and subspace, almost hidden. "Alert the other research stations," Sarah ordered, her professional calm masking her growing excitement. "I want confirmation from at least 3 other locations." Within hours, responses began flowing in. The Singapore Space Center confirmed the signal. Then the European Union's Deep Space Array. Finally, the South African Star Institute. They all detected the same pattern. Sarah spent the next 12 hours analyzing the data with her team. The signal appeared to be some kind of automated beacon, but its complexity suggested it wasn't meant for primitive civilizations to find. Humanity had only detected it by accident, using a combination of instruments that probably weren't meant to work together. "Dr. Chen," Jack called out, his voice shaking slightly. "I think you need to see this." On his screen, a partial translation matrix had begun breaking down components of the signal. Among the streams of incomprehensible data, a few words stood out. "Warning. Preserve. Hide." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. After 50 years of silence, humanity's first contact with alien communication wasn't a greeting, it was a warning. "Send everything to Earth Central," she ordered, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Market priority 1." She turned to look out at the stars again, but they no longer seemed peaceful. Something had scared the galaxy into hiding, and humanity, in its isolation, might be the only civilization left to face it. As alerts began lighting up across the station and messages poured in from Earth, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that humanity's real journey was just beginning. The stars hadn't been silent because they were empty. They had been silent because they were afraid. 3 months after discovering the warning signal, Dr. Sarah Chen found herself walking through the ruins of what had once been an alien city on Kepler 186f. The preservation dome above kept the harsh atmosphere at bay, letting her team work without full environmental suits. "Look at this craftsmanship," Dr. Marcus Wong said, running his scanner over a curved wall that seemed to be made of crystallized light. They were at least 10,000 years ahead of us, technologically speaking. Sarah nodded, making her way to a central structure that resembled a library or data center. Her team had been finding similar buildings across different star systems, but this was the best preserved example yet. "Maria, how's the power connection coming along?" She called out to her technical expert, who was working on connecting their generators to the alien power grid. "Almost there," Maria Rodriguez replied, making final adjustments to her equipment. These systems were designed to last. Even after centuries of abandonment, the basic infrastructure is still functional. A soft hum filled the air as ancient systems began powering up. Holographic displays flickered to life, filling the room with streams of alien text and diagrams. Their translation software immediately began processing the new data. "Dr. Chen," Jack Morrison's voice echoed through their communication channel. "We found something in the lower levels. It looks like, well, you should see this yourself." Sarah made her way down a spiral staircase that seemed to float in midair. In a chamber below, Jack stood before a massive holographic display showing a star map of the galaxy. But unlike their modern maps, this one was alive with activity, showing thousands of civilizations connected by travel routes and communication networks. "This is a historical record," Jack explained, his eyes wide with excitement. "Watch what happens when I move the timeline forward." The display shifted, and Sarah watched as, one by one, the points of light representing different civilizations began to disappear. Not in random patterns, but in an organized retreat. Entire sectors of space going dark in careful planned sequences. "They didn't vanish," Sarah whispered. "They left." "But where did they go?" Maria's voice came through their comms. "Translation software has decoded part of their records. You're going to want to see this." Text began appearing on their tablets, translated from the alien archives. Final protocol initiated. The Harbinger's approach. All advanced civilizations must retreat to the sanctuary dimensions. Species below Class 3 technological development will be left behind as their presence cannot be detected. May the universe forgive our abandonment of them. Class 3 technological development, Marcus read aloud. "That's where humanity was when this happened. We were too primitive to save." Sarah moved through more translated text, her heart racing as she pieced together the truth. The advanced civilizations had discovered a way to create pocket dimensions, spaces hidden from normal reality. When they detected the approach of something they called the Harbingers, they executed a massive evacuation plan. "Look at these calculations," she said, pointing to a complex series of equations. They knew exactly how long they needed to hide. According to this, the predicted emergence point is next month. Jack finished, his face pale. Whatever scared them into hiding is about to return. Sarah's tablet beeped with a priority message from Earth Central. Similar discoveries were being reported from dig sites across 20 different star systems, all pointing to the same conclusion. "We need to get this data back to Earth immediately," Sarah ordered, already heading for the exit. "Download everything you can." As her team rushed to preserve the ancient knowledge, Sarah paused at the top of the stairs, looking back at the star map. The galaxy had once been full of life and knowledge, a thriving community of civilizations. Now humanity stood alone, learning about the danger that was approaching only after it was too late to hide. Or was it? The advanced civilizations had made their choice based on their own technologies and understanding. But humans had survived and thrived throughout history by doing the impossible, by finding solutions where none seemed to exist. They left us behind because they thought we were too primitive to save, Sarah said softly. Maybe it's time to show them that being primitive isn't always a disadvantage. The ancient halls seemed to whisper with echoes of the past, but the future, humanity's future, remained unwritten. The emergency meeting room at Earth Central buzzed with tension as Dr. Sarah Chen presented her findings to the World Space Council. The massive display behind her showed data streams from dozens of archaeological sites across the galaxy. The evidence is clear, Sarah said, her voice steady despite the weight of her words. The Void Harbingers aren't just some alien myth. They're real, and they're returning. Admiral James Thompson leaned forward in his chair, his weathered face reflecting the blue light from the holographic displays. Tell us what we're dealing with, Doctor. Sarah brought up a series of translated alien documents. Based on the records we've discovered, the Harbingers are entities that exist partially outside our normal space-time. They feed on consciousness itself, specifically the type generated by advanced artificial intelligence and highly developed technological civilizations. That's why the other civilizations hid, Dr. Rodriguez added from her seat at the council table. Their technology made them visible to these beings. The more advanced they were, the more they attracted the Harbingers. The room fell silent as images appeared showing the Harbingers' effects on various worlds. Not destruction in the physical sense, but something more unsettling. Planets with intact cities, but completely empty of life. Our relative primitive state compared to these civilizations might be our greatest advantage. Sarah continued. Our neural networks are biological, not artificial. Our technology, while advanced by our standards, is simple compared to what the Harbingers usually hunt. A scientist from the European Union raised his hand. You said they're returning. How long do we have? 3 weeks, Sarah replied, bringing up a timer display. We detected their first probes entering the outer solar system yesterday. Admiral Thompson stood up, his military training evident in his posture. What are our options? Can we hide like the others did? Sarah shook her head. No. The technology required for dimensional pocket space is far beyond our capabilities. But we might have something else. She switched the display to show readings from humanity's first encounter with a Harbinger probe. The recording showed a small exploration ship encountering a dark, shifting mass of energy near Jupiter's orbit. While the ship's AI systems immediately failed, the human pilot remained unaffected. Our minds are messy compared to artificial intelligence, Sarah explained. We think in ways that seem illogical. We make intuitive leaps. We feel emotions. This makes us harder for the Harbingers to process. In every simulation we've run, human consciousness appears as background noise to their senses. So we can fight. Admiral Thompson asked, hope creeping into his voice. We have to, Sarah responded. Not just for ourselves, but for all those civilizations in hiding. If we can prove that the Harbingers can be resisted, maybe even defeated, we might be able to bring the galaxy back to life. The council chamber erupted in discussion as military leaders began forming strategies and scientists proposed ways to protect their essential systems. Sarah watched them work, feeling a strange mix of fear and pride. Humanity had spent 50 years feeling left behind by the galaxy, only to discover they might be its last hope. Dr. Chen, a young aide, rushed into the room, tablet in hand. We're detecting more probes entering the solar system. They're heading straight for our outer colonies. Sarah looked at the incoming data and felt her heart skip a beat. The Harbingers weren't just sending scouts anymore. This was the beginning of their real invasion. Admiral Thompson moved to her side, studying the tactical display. How long until they reached the Mars colony? 5 days, Sarah answered. We need to evacuate anyone who works with advanced AI systems. Keep only essential personnel with minimal technological enhancement. As the room mobilized into action, Sarah couldn't help but appreciate the irony. All those centuries of human development rushing to become more advanced, and now their survival might depend on their ability to step back from that advancement. The Harbingers were coming, expecting to find another easy target, a primitive species not worth hiding from. Instead, they would find humanity, chaotic, unpredictable, and ready to fight back with the very qualities that had made them seem too primitive to save. The storm was approaching, but for the first time in galactic history, someone was standing ready to face it. Captain Maya Patel sat in the cockpit of her fighter ship, watching as the dark mass of the Harbinger probe swirled through space ahead. Around her, the defense fleet's eye-controlled ships were falling silent one by one, their systems going dark as the entity absorbed their artificial consciousness. All human pilots maintain formation, she commanded through the comm system. Remember your training. Trust your instincts, not the computers. The fleet had stripped their ships down to basic systems, removing advanced AI assistance and relying instead on human reflexes and simple mechanical controls. It felt like stepping back in time, but it was their only chance. Harbinger probe is changing course, reported Lieutenant James Chen from his ship. It seems confused by our presence. Maya allowed herself a small smile. The scientists had been right. The Harbingers couldn't easily detect or understand human consciousness. Where they expected to find complex AI networks, they found only the chaotic patterns of human thought. Battle Group 1, engage according to plan, Maya ordered, pushing her throttle forward. Her ship, running on minimal electronics, responded to her touch like an extension of her body. Around her, 20 other human pilots followed her lead. The Harbinger probe reacted, sending out tendrils of dark energy that had disabled more advanced ships with ease. But the human pilots, relying on sight and instinct rather than computer targeting, weaved through the attack pattern. "It can't predict where we're going," called out Lieutenant Chen excitedly. "Our randomness is working." Maya's hands flew over her manual controls, executing maneuvers that would have been considered inefficient by any AI system. But efficiency wasn't the goal. Unpredictability was their weapon. "Launch countermeasures," she commanded. The fleet released specially designed missiles, their guidance systems purposefully simplified to avoid Harbinger interference. The weapons spiraled through space in patterns that seemed chaotic, but were carefully planned to surround the probe. The Harbinger entity tried to adapt, its form shifting and stretching. But for the first time, in its ancient existence, it faced an enemy it couldn't simply absorb or overwhelm. Detonation in 3, 2, 1. Maya counted down. The missiles exploded, not with traditional force but with waves of energy designed to disrupt the Harbinger's form. The entity writhed, its darkness fragmenting under the assault. "It's working," someone shouted over the comms. "The disruption field is holding." Maya watched as the probe's form began to break apart, unable to maintain cohesion under the combined assault of energy weapons and unpredictable human attacks. With a final surge of dark energy, it dissolved into nothingness. The command channel crackled to life with Dr. Sarah Chen's voice from Earth Central. "Captain Patel, are you seeing what we're seeing? Did you just—" "Yes, Doctor," Maya replied, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "The Harbinger probe has been destroyed. Humanity just won its first battle." Cheers erupted across all channels as the news spread. But Maya kept her eyes on her sensors, knowing this was just the beginning. The probe had only been a scout. The main Harbinger force was still coming. Back at Earth Central, Sarah turned to Admiral Thompson with tears in her eyes. The strategy worked. Human unpredictability combined with simplified technology. We found their weakness. The Admiral nodded, already looking at reports from other sectors. "Get this data to all our defense forces immediately. Every human pilot needs to know that we can fight these things." In her cockpit, Maya began running checks on her ship's systems, preparing for the next encounter. The victory felt good, but she knew the real test was still to come. The Harbingers would learn from this defeat, would try to adapt to humanity's chaotic fighting style. But humans were good at adapting too. They'd spent their entire history learning, changing, and overcoming impossible odds. Now they would teach the galaxy's greatest threat A lesson about underestimating primitive species. All ships, return to base, Maya ordered. We need to prepare for the next wave. And this time, we'll be ready for them. As the fleet turned toward home, their simple engines glowing against the starfield, Maya felt a fierce pride. Humanity had just proved that sometimes the simplest solution was the best one, and that being primitive might just save the galaxy. Dr. Sarah Chen stood before the dimensional beacon, a device rebuilt from ancient alien plans. After 3 months of victories against Harbinger probes, humanity was ready to try something bold, contacting the civilizations in hiding. Power levels stable, Maria Rodriguez reported, monitoring the complex array of equipment. The signal should penetrate dimensional barriers according to the recovered specifications. Sarah nodded, her fingers moving across the control panel. They had modified the signal to carry a simple message. Humanity had found a way to fight back. Along with the message, they included recordings of successful battles against the Harbingers. Signal transmitting, Maria announced. The beacon hummed, sending ripples through space-time that made Sarah's teeth tingle. Now we wait. They didn't have to wait long. Within hours, the first response came, not through their beacon, but through a shimmering tear in reality that appeared in the laboratory. A holographic figure stepped through, tall and elegant with crystalline features. The alien's form sparkled with colors that seemed to exist beyond normal human vision. "I am first speaker Zixtal," the being announced, its words automatically translated by the systems they had prepared. "Your signal. It should not be possible. Your species was classified as too primitive to save." Sarah straightened her back, meeting the alien's gaze. "We were primitive by your standards, yes. But that's exactly why we can fight the Harbingers. Would you like to see?" She played the recording of Captain Patel's battle group destroying the first Harbinger probe. The alien watched in silence, its crystalline form shifting colors rapidly. "Impossible," Zixtal whispered. "Your neural patterns, they're too chaotic for the Harbingers to process. And your technology is simple enough to resist their influence." Sarah finished. Sometimes being primitive has its advantages. More dimensional tears appeared as other species joined the conversation. Each one expressed disbelief at first, then growing interest as they watched more evidence of humanity's successes. A floating cloud of light that introduced itself as the collective mind of Andromeda spoke next. "Your species fights with instinct and emotion, using technology that we would consider outdated. Yet you achieve what our most advanced weapons could not. We need your help," Sarah said, facing the gathered representatives. "The main Harbinger force is approaching. Humanity can fight them, but we don't have the numbers to protect the entire galaxy. We need you to come back." The aliens shared looks that transcended normal communication. Finally, Zixtal spoke again. "You ask us to leave our safe havens and fight alongside primitives. We ask you to help us save our galaxy," Sarah corrected firmly. "You can hide forever in your pocket dimensions, watching as the Harbingers consume everything you left behind. Or you can join us and fight back. We may be primitive, but we're still standing while you've been hiding." Her words caused a stir among the gathered aliens. The collective mind pulsed with new colors. The human speaks truth. We abandoned our galaxy out of fear. Perhaps it is time to learn from these younger siblings. Zixtal's crystalline form shimmered as it considered. "Your victory recordings show promise, but the main Harbinger force is vastly more powerful than mere probes. What makes you think you can succeed?" Sarah smiled. "Because we don't think like you do. We don't calculate odds or rely on pure logic. We hope. We dream. We fight even when the numbers say we can't win. That's what makes us human." A new figure stepped forward, its body seeming to shift between different forms. "The consensus of elders agrees. We will provide support to the Human Defense Force. Our advanced technology, combined with their unique approach, might be the solution we never saw before." Sarah felt her heart soar as more aliens stepped forward to pledge their support. the galaxy's most advanced civilizations, finally emerging from hiding to stand with humanity, the species they had once abandoned as too primitive to save. As the aliens began discussing strategy and sharing technology, Sarah sent a message to Earth Central. They're coming back. The galaxy is waking up. The response from Admiral Thompson was brief. Tell them to hurry. The Harbinger's main force will be here in 2 weeks. Sarah looked at her new allies, hoping they could learn to fight like humans quickly enough. The real battle was about to begin. Captain Maya Patel stood in the massive training chamber of Earth's Space Defense Academy, watching as crystalline aliens attempted to pilot simplified fighter ships. The results were both amusing and concerning. No, you're thinking too logically, she called out to Zixtal, who had crashed the simulator for the 3rd time. Stop calculating the perfect angle. Feel the ship's movement. Dr. Sarah Chen watched from the observation deck as humanity's most unlikely training program continued. Advanced civilizations, capable of bending space-time, were struggling to master what they considered primitive technology. Their minds are too ordered, Sarah explained to Admiral Thompson, who stood beside her. They'd spent thousands of years perfecting logical thinking and AI integration. Now they need to unlearn it all. Below, Maria Rodriguez was teaching a group of energy beings how to operate manual targeting systems. The aliens, used to neural interfaces and perfect aim, couldn't understand why they had to use physical controls. Because the Harbingers can't read physical actions as easily as they can read digital signals, Maria explained patiently. Trust your instincts, not your calculations. In another section of the chamber, Lieutenant Chen worked with the collective mind, teaching them how to fight as individuals rather than a single coordinated unit. Unpredictability is our advantage, he explained. If you all think and act as one, you become an easier target. The aliens were struggling, but they were also learning. After a week of training, Zixtal finally completed a simulator run without crashing. The crystalline being's colors shifted with pride. I felt it, Zixtal announced, sounding surprised. Instead of calculating vectors, I simply moved. It was chaotic, inefficient, but it worked. Maya finished with a smile. That's how we fight. That's how we survive. The consensus of elders, who had been observing silently, finally spoke. We have spent millennia advancing beyond such basic reactions. Yet now our survival depends on remembering how to be simpler. Sarah approached the alien leaders gathered at the chamber center. We're not asking you to forget your advanced knowledge. We're asking you to combine it with our way of thinking, your technology with our instincts, your power with our unpredictability. In the background, cheers erupted as an energy being successfully performed a manual evasive maneuver. The aliens' natural glow brightened with excitement, an emotional response they hadn't shown before. They're starting to understand, Maya said quietly to Sarah. Not just how to fight like us, but why it works. Admiral Thompson checked his tablet, his face growing serious. Let's hope they learn fast enough. The Harbinger fleet will reach our outer defense line in 3 days. Sarah watched as more aliens mastered the simplified controls, their movements becoming more fluid, more human-like. Some were even starting to show signs of intuitive decision-making, rather than pure logical analysis. Look at their neural patterns, Maria called out, pointing to her monitoring screen. The aliens' thought processes were becoming more chaotic, more unpredictable, more like human minds. We're not just teaching them to fight, Sarah realized. We're teaching them to embrace the parts of themselves they left behind in their rush to advance. The emotion, the instinct, the ability to act without calculating every outcome. The training continued around the clock. Aliens who had once looked down on humanity as primitives now eagerly learned from human instructors. They combined their advanced understanding with human instincts, creating a hybrid fighting style unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. We're ready for the final test, Maya announced on the last day of training. The combined fleet of human and alien pilots faced a simulator running their most advanced Harbinger combat scenarios. As Sarah watched the ships move in patterns that defied logical analysis yet worked perfectly together, she felt hope rising in her chest. The most advanced civilizations in the galaxy had hidden from the Harbingers for centuries. Now, taught by the primitives they'd left behind, they were ready to fight back. "Send word to all defense stations," Admiral Thompson ordered. "The combined fleet moves out tomorrow. It's time to show the Harbingers what happens when the galaxy stands together." The real battle was about to begin, and humanity would lead the charge. The combined fleet of human and alien ships hung in space near Jupiter's orbit, waiting for the approaching Harbinger force. Captain Maya Patel sat in her command ship, surrounded by both familiar human faces and the ethereal forms of their alien allies. "Main Harbinger fleet detected," Lieutenant Chen announced. "Multiple dimensional distortions approaching. They're bigger than anything we've encountered before." On Earth, Dr. Sarah Chen and Admiral Thompson watched from Command Central as massive dark shapes emerged from deep space. The Harbingers had arrived in force, their forms blotting out the stars themselves. "All ships, remember your training," Maya's voice carried across all channels. "Humans, trust your instincts. Allies, forget your calculations. Together, we show them why they should have never ignored humanity." The Harbingers struck first, sending waves of energy designed to corrupt advanced technology. But the fleet was ready. The alien ships, now running on simplified systems, continued functioning. Human pilots led the first attack wave, their chaotic flight patterns creating gaps in the Harbingers' defenses. "Pattern Alpha," Maya commanded. The fleet split into smaller groups, each led by human pilots with alien ships following their seemingly random movements. The Harbingers' energy tendrils grasped at empty space, unable to predict the fleet's movements. "It's working," Sarah exclaimed, watching the tactical display. "The Harbingers can't adapt to the combined attack patterns." Zixtal's crystalline ship spun in a distinctly human maneuver, leading a squadron through the Harbingers' defenses. The energy beings of the collective mind, flying as individuals rather than a unified force, created confusion in the enemy ranks. "Consensus Squadron, launch the disruptor beams," Maya ordered. The former consensus of elders, now fighting with human-like unpredictability, fired weapons that combined their advanced technology with humanity's chaotic targeting methods. The Harbingers, faced with an enemy they couldn't predict or absorb, began to fall back. But humanity and their allies pressed forward, refusing to let them escape. "They're trying to retreat into deep space," Admiral Thompson observed. "They've never faced resistance like this." "All ships, final attack pattern," Maya commanded. The entire fleet moved as one, yet each ship followed its own path, creating a storm of movement and energy that the Harbingers couldn't process. Sarah watched in awe as humanity's primitive battle tactics, combined with alien technology, tore through the Harbinger forces. The dark entities, used to simply overwhelming and absorbing advanced civilizations, had no defense against this hybrid warfare. "Look," Lieutenant Chen called out. "Their central mass is destabilizing." The main Harbinger cluster, unable to maintain cohesion under the assault, began to break apart. Human instinct and alien power struck together, turning the hunters into the hunted. With a final massive burst of combined fire, the fleet struck the Harbinger core. The dark entity writhed, its form collapsing in on itself. In a flash of reality-bending energy, the ancient threat vanished, taking its remaining forces with it. Silence fell across space, broken only by the cheers that erupted across all channels. Human and alien voices joined together in celebration. Back on Earth, Sarah hugged Maria tightly as Admiral Thompson smiled broadly. "Send word to all colonies and hidden civilizations," he ordered. "The Harbingers are gone. The galaxy is safe." 1 month later, Sarah stood before the newly formed Galactic Council, watching as representatives from hundreds of species emerged from hiding to rejoin normal space. "The galaxy remembers this day," Zixtal announced, its crystalline form glowing with new colors. When the civilizations they called primitive became the guardians of us all. Maya, standing beside Sarah, spoke next. Humanity never needed to be saved. We just needed a chance to prove ourselves. Now let's rebuild this galaxy together, not as advanced or primitive species, but as equals. The council chamber filled with agreement as former enemies became allies, teachers became students, and the galaxy awakened to a new era of cooperation. In the space around Earth, ships of all designs and origins flew together, their pilots learning from each other. Humanity had not only survived, but had taught the galaxy's oldest civilizations a valuable lesson. True advancement comes not from abandoning your basic nature, but from embracing all parts of who you are. The stars were no longer silent, and humanity, once ignored, now stood as guardians of a reborn galaxy, ready to face whatever challenges the future might bring.